Get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We're excited to learn from this amazing group of panelists that we have up here as our HR Advisory Board. So thank you again for being here and bringing your curiosity and your desire to learn. Just by way of introduction, I'll do a brief introduction for the panelists, and then we'll kind of get into some preset questions to kind of get us started. And then we'll ask question by question, any questions from the audience that you guys have as well. We can build in. I'll be walking around with a mic that you guys can be answering or asking your questions directly to them. And if there's any questions that'll be specific from you guys, I think that'll be very helpful as well. So we'll start off with just some introduction here. So we have, of course, Dr. Hartwell, who is the MHR director on campus here, that many of you guys know. And then we have Ben Coffin. Benjamin Coffin is the Vice President of Human Resources for PIP Global Safety. We're very grateful for him to be here. Then we have Matthew Smith, who's a HR Director at PepsiCo. Thank you so much for being here. We also have Hayden Anderson, who is an HR Director at Honeywell as well. And then we have Matt Todd, who's the VP of HR at Old Castle Building Envelopes. Grateful to have you here. As well as Marcus Shaw, who is an HR Director at General Mills. Again, amazing panelist up here, probably close to, 5+ decades of experience between the whole panelists. There's some amazing experience up here. So this is a great group to ask questions to. So by way of getting started, I'll pass it off to Matt Smith, who will get us started, or Matt Todd, one of the two, Matt Todd, who will get us started with our first question, and then we'll go forward from there. So.
Yeah, thank you, Dallin. And I don't think Dallin introduced himself. So that's Dallin Jenkins. He is the president of our Masters of Human Resources Student Association. And so appreciate him being here as well. Another notable thing about our panelists here, again, maybe a plug for our MHR program, is that 4 of the 5 are graduates of our MHR program, and Marcus is an honorary graduate. Marcus went to that school a little down south that we don't talk about, but he's an honorary Aggie for sure. So. All right, so to get us started, the focus of today's panel is how to kind of navigate your careers through today's business environment, and one that we're labeling as a VUCA environment. And if you haven't heard that term before, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that's the type of business environment that we really operate in today. So with that as the backdrop, my first question, and again, we'll start with Matt Todd here. When you think about today's business environment, what makes it especially volatile, uncertain, complex, or ambiguous compared to when you started your career?
The short answer is everything, right? I mean, we all see what's going on around the world right now and the impact on business and industry and society, and everything falls into a VUCA kind of framework, I think. What I would actually suggest is that at a lot of times in history, you've had elements of those VUCA components that are variable. Some are dialed way up, some aren't dialed as far up. But I think right now, everything across the VUCA landscape is dialed up to 100, 110%. I think there's just, there's so much of that volatility and uncertainty in the ecosystem, the world ecosystem right now, and it's especially challenging from a job standpoint, right? But it's also an opportunity because in a volatile and uncertain and unstable world, that allows and unlocks opportunity for all of you to be able to say, okay, I understand these elements and I can be intentional around how I prepare myself to live within those elements and thrive. And so I think my advice for all of you as you're thinking about your careers and you're thinking about your future is to really think about it with that intentionality of how do I prepare myself to deal with volatility and uncertainty, and how do I frame it to potential employers? How do I think about the classes that I take, the questions that I ask, and the skills that I develop over the next, 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 years, to be able to function and to differentiate against others in that environment. So when I started my career in HR, which is my second career, I will say, but when I started my career in HR in 2010 with my internship as part of the Masters in HR program, it was a little bit VUCA. We were coming out of the 2009 Great Recession. The economy, globally was soft, but it wasn't as dialed up as it is now. And so I think, in looking back as I was reflecting on this question and how to answer it, I think you really have to be intentional about how you prepare, how you differentiate, and how you build out your skills to be better than everybody else at navigating that VUCA environment. And I will tell you, there's an antidote to VUCA, so you can look it up, but there are ways in which you can be thoughtful around navigating that VUCA environment, and I won't get them all right. It's the volatility, and you flip that to vision. Uncertainty, you flip to understanding, and the other two you'll have to look for yourself. So I'll give you the teaser. But I think if you're really thoughtful and intentional around how you assess your own skills and how you develop and how you plan your career out, I think you can differentiate against others that are not doing it as well. I'll stop there. I will say, just because I've got to give this board a plug, this board is fantastic, but what I would say is that we exist for all of you. So this is why we're here. When you think about from a business standpoint, businesses exist for the customer. This advisory board is all about how to help you be successful in the future. So I do want to point that out, and we take it really seriously. It's part of why we're here. It's part of the commitment that we have, and it's part of the, I think, what we love about being able to be part of the Utah State Huntsman School as an advisory board, and recruiters and participants, and all of your success. Anybody else?
I think one thing that I've had to be very reflective on is working for a global company. Your eyes just are opened up to what's happening in the world. So one of my best peers at work grew up in the Middle East, and every day is experiencing Zoom calls and like bombs going off, and it's honestly it's hard for me to talk about because it's like this is the stuff that you learn going to some of these big companies. So the business environment is VUCA, but your relationships with global employees, peers, customers is also VUCA, and I just can't even imagine what's happening in some parts of the world. And so for me, I think it's just so important. One, leadership. It's an opportunity for all of you to be leaders in companies where things are very rapidly changing, but also in your relationships with your coworkers, with customers, with partners, employees that you're supporting. You have no idea what they're experiencing when they go home, right? Or what they're experiencing with their families when there's wars happening all across this world. So that's been something that I think just being reflective, being uncomfortable, get comfortable, being uncomfortable is super important, but recognizing it's a big world and there's a lot of bad things happening out there.
Great, thank you. To Matt, Todd's point, I will say last week we had Steve Hansen from Google Fiber who spoke to our master's students, and he gave us that antidote for VUCA. So it's vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Yes. So those are your antidotes for VUCA there.
I thought that was the homework.
That's right. I gave them the answer. All right, so next up, we'll start with Ben on this question. So what are some of the capabilities and mindsets that have helped you navigate uncertainty in your career?
Okay, so first of all, super excited to be here. This one hits really close to home. So just as just a really quick background, so I grew up in just north here in West Yellowstone, Montana. My father was a forest ranger, super stable, nothing really ever changed. Nothing, really. And even if you go back now, it's pretty much the same. And so fast forward, having experience kind of across the globe, but I'll just share one that I think will kind of help to illustrate how I want to answer. 2013? No, sorry. This would have been 2019, show up for work one day, and they say, hey, Ben, I was getting on a call with my boss, our one-on-one, regularly scheduled one-on-one. I get on the call with her, and there's another, the head of compensation. I'm like, oh no, what's this about? They're like, hey, your position's been eliminated due to a restructuring. Actually, it was because of COVID, 2020. Restructuring, you've got a choice. You can leave, you can move, or you can stay where you are. Up to you. And that hit me, right? Then, fast forward, work through COVID, you kind of work through that kind of tough time. Then you go into, hey, here's a new job opportunity, but by the way, you're about to be sold. So if you take this job, we don't know if the buyers will want to keep you, or if you certainly can't stay with Honeywell because you got to go, but if the buyers don't want you on the other end, sorry. It would be a good experience, once in a lifetime. Are you ready? Right? So all of that felt really, really good. Not really, right? So to Hayden's point, when we think about VUCA, we think about that, sometimes we first think about that in everything else that's happening in the world, and that's true. But in your own life, there are times where a volatility, uncertainty, lack of clarity, all of those types of things, right? I don't think there's anyone sitting here who can't relate to that to some degree. So when you think about how you manage through that, I think the first thing is purpose. You have to have purpose, right? Purpose can come from a lot of different places, right? It can come from your faith. It can come from a lot of other places as well. But you have to have purpose. That is what will help to kind of guide you through, right? That's your values. That's what's important to you. It could be your family, whatever that is. You have to be grounded in purpose. That's number one. Number two is mindset. If you haven't read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, it's super good. Has anyone read it? Okay, pick it up. It's really good. It's a neat way to think about things, right? So she talks about how there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and how we kind of vacillate between the two. But I think navigating that is continuing to have a growth mindset. Understanding that the opportunity that's before you seems scary, it probably is, that's real. There's a lot of feelings that are associated with that, but what will help you to get through that is to be grounded in seeing it for what it is, right? That will also drive you, a growth mindset drives you to build relationships with people, to have a network of people that you can go to, that you can rely on, that can give you guidance, that can give you mentoring, right? All of those types of things can help you to kind of navigate through. Another mindset that's important is act or be acted upon, right? So you can have purpose, you can have the right mindset and be like, okay, I'm gonna kind of pull myself together, but if you don't act, a force will act upon you. Very simple. I have to act against gravity to get myself out of bed in the morning, right? But there's other forces that will impact you if you choose not to act. So I think those are some things that have been really helpful to me and have driven building capability. I think when I first started my career, I was like, okay, what company can I align myself that doesn't do layoffs? That's crazy talk, right? That's crazy talk, right? There are very few that that don't do layoffs that are still surviving. Now that's not, we shouldn't run toward that, right? Look at the whole thing, but you don't run away from a VUCA environment. Lean in, right? Purpose and mindset.
I'll take it really quick if I can. So the portion where you talked about act or be acted upon, I relate to this in my own little way. One thing you cannot do when you start working at a company or an internship or anything is ask permission. I hate that. I hate it when, and I've said this a few times, if you've talked to me at all. But often when you start working at a company or you start doing something that you're not comfortable with, you start saying, hey, can I go do this? Or can I go do that? And right there and then, you get in a spot where you're trying to prove your value, and it doesn't come off well. So rather than ask for permission, say, this is what I'm going to do. Stop me if you have concerns, right? And then you suddenly flip the script a little bit, where you put the onus on them to have reins on you, and you start building your brand a little bit of someone who is starting to demonstrate their creativity, as someone who's actually pushing the envelope a little bit on what's normal. Go ahead and exercise that. That's good.
Turn the ship around.
Yeah, haven't been in that.
So I think oftentimes when we think about uncertainty, because the question was about uncertainty, we kind of go straight to like what we don't know. I would urge you to think about the upside of uncertainty. There is actually a really good book that I read with that title. And so as you think about uncertainty, it can often be a scary thing, but there are other things tied to uncertainty that are positive. And we think about creativity, if we think about innovation, if we think about all the things that, to your point about kind of permission, control what you can control, et cetera, there are good things about uncertainty. And so I hope sometimes when the time comes where we're feeling scared or worried or we doubt, think about the positives of uncertainty, because I mean, that's where the fun really lies, of like, we have the world in front of us. What do we want to do? So.
Great, thank you. All right, next up, Matt Smith, we'll start with you. What advice do you have about how to effectively handle setbacks, layoffs, stagnation, or other career frustrations?
All right, I have my bullet points, but once I start speaking, I never know where it's going to go. So, we'll see. But I was laid off. I had that experience. So 2008, housing market goes down. Had a great offer with 3M coming out of undergraduate. Super excited. And then they pulled the offer from me. That was rough. Then I went to New Skin. New Skin was working at New Skin for a little bit, and same type of thing. They got a shrink, and Matt, sorry, you're not longer any part of the team. Super hard to hear, right? Because you're trying your best, and then the rug's pulled from under you a little bit. Is it our motto? I can't remember what it is specifically, but at Utah State they say dare mighty things, right? What is that called? Anybody? Like, is that our motto? Yeah. Okay, it's our motto. Dare mighty things. You're the only one holding yourself back, I think, from success. You're here for a reason. You are doing what you need to do in order to succeed. You have to change your mindset a little bit on who you are and what you can do. Part of it for me was relationships, and I know that's your topic, so I got to be careful. I know, sorry. But the reason I got into the program, which, by the way, 15 years ago was not the program it is today, was a friend, Doug Horner. You know Doug, right? Doug Horner, grew up with him, amazing guy. He recommended this to me and to come out here, and I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him. When you go into your career, it's all going to be about relationships. I am not the technical expert in human resources by any means. Yeah, I'm in California. Apparently that's hard. Okay, thank you. But it's all about doing things with others and through others. So when you talk about networking It's not about making friends. It's not about doing that. It's starting to see, okay, how can I strategically build my brand by executing, getting results, often through others and who you know. I am the most introverted guy. Whenever we come to this, I have to be extroverted. And it drains the heck out of me to do it. But honestly, that effort behind it, that daring, mighty things behind it, of coming out of your shell and showing that you can add value is what's going to push you forward. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So I think in this, Stephen Covey talked about, he said it better than I will, but he talked about like this space between a stimulus and a response. So something happens and you respond. And he talked about how, like for example, someone does something or says something and you react, right? Your space between your stimulus and the response is really, really thin. What he talked about is as you develop, capability, as you have the right mindset, as you have experience, that space can increase. And I think that's really important when you're dealing with things that hit you, right? Either because of maybe poor decisions that you made or because of other circumstances like we're talking about. I think if you can think about, okay, how am I going to respond? And train yourself to think that through, right? Give yourself that space, because it's in that space, that's where you grow. That's where it happens, right? So I think understanding that and being self-aware enough to say, hey, I'm hitting something here. I'm going to just pause, take a quiet moment, and then I'm going to figure out what my next step is. That helps, I think, to navigate some of that uncertainty.
I think the only other thing I would add on this advice component is we all need to check our egos. I've been at Honeywell for 8 years. I started as an intern, now I'm a director. And throughout my journey, I really love this idea of peaks and valleys. There's gonna be high highs and low lows. And throughout a career, you have to navigate all of it. So working for some of these big companies, a lot of us have gone through a LDP, Leadership Development Program, where there's structure and like you come in, you do a role for 18 months, and then you have a program that helps you get to the next job. But eventually, you're going to have to graduate. And then you have to apply for roles and kind of navigate your career. And as Matt told us, the next question, we're going to talk about relationships. But as you navigating different roles and moving up and getting promotions, eventually, you're going to get told no. And in my experience, Honeywell, we've hired 50 Utah State folks into HR in the past 17 years. And there's been a mix of every single one of those 50 career paths has looked different. And so I think it's easy to come into an organization and think, so I'll kind of embarrass him a little bit, but so Matt Todd recruited me to Honeywell. So he was the campus manager. He was what success looked like, had all this charisma. I was wearing the sunglasses in the one-on-one. I was like, oh my gosh, like Matt Todd is the bar. I want to be Matt Todd. And I had this vision that when I was at Matt Todd's level, I would have it figured out. There would be nothing that would hit my desk that I wouldn't know what to do. That's just not true. I still feel imposter syndrome. I still, when I go into a new role, have no idea what I'm doing, and you have to navigate that. And so along my journey, I've applied for stuff and been told no, and it would be very easy to have ego say, all right, Honeywell sucks. I'm going to leave. They don't like me anymore. This manager didn't give me that opportunity. And that's not, look, every situation is different, but what I would ask you to reflect on is challenge that thinking. And oftentimes, like if you get told no, there's a reason, right? Everything happens for a reason, like whatever you believe in. But I think when you get told no, that's the time to reflect. Why? Why did you get told no? Is there a skill set that you need to develop? Do you need networking, like to build your network a little bit more? But I think don't let your ego do the talking in your career decisions.
I will say I pulled the wool over his eyes really well.
And let me just say, Matt is still the bar, okay? He's still got the charisma. So as Matt was talking earlier, one of the things that came to mind was everyone has had experiences where they've had some sort of failure. From Matt, he shared how his internship got pulled. We've had role changes, organizations being split up, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that came to mind was the challenge doesn't define you. So we're all going to have things that happen that are outside of our control. That doesn't define us. It's how we respond to it. It's checking our ego at the door and what are we going to do differently or what are we going to do about it? I worry that sometimes students, they might not get the grade that they want. They might not get the internship they want. They might not get the full-time offer that they want. And they think that's reflective of them and that defines them, and that is not the case. The challenge does not define you, it's what you do about it, okay? And I am the introvert of this panel, not Matt.
I might just add in a bit really quick that, I'd come back to really figuring out how to make opportunity out of these things and being intentional about it. And I think it is okay at times, especially when you have significant disappointments, give yourself a little space, right? So, hey, take the pity party, do it for a minute, but then come out of it with intentionality and trying to figure out what the opportunity is and how you can differentiate. Especially against that, whatever it was that, that didn't go the way that you thought it should. So I come back to, I think, just that intentionality and building opportunity and being really thoughtful about what you can make out of that, that disappointment.
Great, thank you. All right, this is the last prepared question, so be ready to ask some questions after this one. This question's been alluded to a couple of times. We'll start with Hayden. How important is networking and relationship building in today's business environment?
So I actually hate the term networking. It's kind of a bad word, I think. My view is the narrative of networking, it's transactional. I'm trying to take something from somebody. I really love the idea of relationship building. So for me in my career, again, it's been eight years. I've been in 7 or 8 different roles. Every single one of those role transitions has been as a result of relationship building. So in most of those cases, I told a leader what I wanted to do next, and then they made it happen. So, and in several of those cases, there wasn't an open role. I didn't apply to anything. It was just the right people are aware. I build the relationships, have the brand and the identity, and they make it happen. So I think it's everything. I would love for multiple other responses because this is huge. Like relationship building is huge. I mean, if you think about some of these large corporations, it's an ecosystem. It's dynamic. It's ever-changing. Honeywell has 100,000 employees. It's so easy to feel like employee H424872. And that is. Yeah, write it down. It's easy to feel like just another number in a company. And I think, as like I alluded to my colleague from the Middle East, the relationships is one of my favorite part of what I do. I mean, the past 5 years I've been recruiting at Utah State. Honestly, interacting with all of you is one of my favorite parts of the job. Recruiting, watching you guys grow and do amazing things and come from literally a student to conquering the world at some of the biggest companies in the world. It's just a beautiful dynamic. But relationship building is everything. One thing from an advice perspective that I would challenge you all is there are so many different types of relationships when you get into these big companies. A lot of them can be structured. So if you're doing some sort of an internship or an LDP, you'll likely be assigned a mentor. And obviously you have your manager and your colleagues. But there's also unstructured. And going back to what was said earlier, asking for permission is dangerous. Because if the only relationships that you build upon are the ones that someone else sets up for you, you're significantly holding yourself back. So is there a leader that you really look up to? Set up a one-on-one with them. Go get a coffee. Go get a lunch. If it's a really good conversation, maybe you do a quarterly one-on-one. You know, and like obviously depending on the leader, depending on the situation, you'll have to kind of read the room. But some of the best mentoring relationships I've had, I just asked. I just said, hey, like, I'd love to learn more from you. Are you okay if we make this a monthly thing? And a lot of those folks ended up being a future boss. So make sure you're comfortable with structured and unstructured. And then the last thing is take advantage of one-on-ones. So I have a OneNote page, and one of the tabs is one-on-ones. It's got everyone's name on it. I take notes of every single conversation that I have, put the date, write down everything we talk about, try to do some sort of a personal connection at the beginning. But it makes a big difference if you show up prepared to a one-on-one, if you ask really good questions that you're, like things that you're curious about. I think it makes a really big impact on your brand, you know, as you navigate those relationship building situations. Other thoughts?
I'll take it for a second. So I referenced that this is my second career. My first career was as a biology teacher, the high school level. Hayden opened it up by mentioning ecosystem, so I can't hold back with that and the biology component. But if you think about relationships, both in the business environment and personally, it's a web. So if you think back to your biology classes in undergrad or in high school, that food web that exists in the world is the same as the relationship ecosystems that we're talking about here. And it's made up of all of these interconnected nodes that are, in many cases, mutually beneficial. So I think there's this piece there where you have to recognize that web exists, and you have to work to reinforce that web. And a lot of that comes back to giving back, to helping others succeed, and doing that from that mutually beneficial approach, because at the end, as you do that, it also brings you benefit, right? And there's been multiple times where I've had opportunities in my career that have come like out of the blue, but it's because of that web of relationships and that interconnectedness and the nodes where I've been able to help somebody, and then some point later in the future, that person has a way to help me. And so being intentional and purposeful about how you build out that web, and how you interact with it, make your own luck at times, create those relationships where it makes sense, like Hayden talked about, and really think about it as that web of interconnection.
Okay, so I am all in with Hayden. I hate the term networking. It feels dirty, but it's real. Like, I think there's one school of thinking is like, I just don't do it because I don't like it. But it's real and it's necessary. It's important. So one of the things that I struggled with was, how do I do it in a way that matches me, right? How do I do that? And a really good friend of mine who's like the quintessential entrepreneur, he recently opened a skate shop in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So I don't know, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's a cool story. But one of the things that he taught me a couple things about networking. Number one, like, where possible, don't ask for things that you're not willing to eventually give back in some way, right? To Hayden's point, you're building a relationship, right? Showing genuine interest in someone, not okay, I'm supposed to call you and I'm supposed to have a one-on-one, I'm supposed to show interest, but a genuine interest. Learn about the person, understand where they're coming from. I love the idea of taking notes, making it personal. When I worked in sales years and years ago, we used to have we called it the warm-up. And I was required by my boss to come out of that call. He didn't care about the products I sold. He said, what did you learn? 3 things. What 3 things did you learn about that person? What did you learn about their family, about their interest, about their hobbies? That was the rule. That's how we sold. And if that transcends all functions, not just sales. So it's just, again, it's that mindset of, how do I connect with other people in my way? And what you'll find is that there's a lot of people that will like you. if you just be you. When you're trying to be someone else to get something, that's the part and it makes other people uncomfortable. Before I finish this thought, this is really cool to like make a connection. So I'm sitting in mainland China, somebody calls up who was a contact of a contact and says, hey, I've got this friend, actually he's my program director named Steve Hanks. He'd like to come to China and bring a bunch of people over, bring like a bunch of students, MHR students to come to China. Would you be willing to talk to him? Sure, I'd love to meet Mr. Hanks. So Steve Hanks shows up in Shanghai, we have dinner together. I'm like, wow, he's kind of a cool guy. He's like, hey, could you help to kind of facilitate some of this stuff and meet with our students? Absolutely, that would be great. A couple years later, I say to Steve, after we've kind of built up this friendship, hey, your program seems to be getting better and better. The students seem to be better and better. How would somebody like me fit into your program? The gray hair was there then, just like it is now. This is like frosted tips, right? So then he's like, hey, why don't you get in contact with this guy named Matt Todd? So it's like the Matt Todd hour, right? So Matt Todd. So I contact Matt Todd, and Matt Todd's like, well, let me tell you about Honeywell. Let me tell you about what I do. So we started like, was it biannual or quarterly? Matt and I would connect. Then I came to campus, and I met Julie Pond. And Julie Pond is like, wow, you're a great fit for our program. Have you talked to Matt Todd? I'm like, yep, I've talked to Matt Todd. And she's like, yeah, you've got to interview this guy. So then that's how I got to where I was in Honeywell. The whole point is that everybody has a story like that. That's the beauty of networking. And so when I look at a Julie Pond, I'm like, I have feels for Julie Pond. When I hear Matt Todd, I'm like, I got feels. And this guy right here, my first role in Honeywell, he made it happen because he said, hey, there's this guy that's interviewed at like 9 different places in Honeywell, really wants to get in. I think you should talk to him. And that's what happened.
Just first of all, if you think about getting better each time, I think Matt and I are like the Pokemon, and you're like the evolved Pokemon or something.
Which Pokemon?
I don't know. I don't know it that well. Okay. Sorry, that was my random thoughts. Going to let's call it relationship building again. It cannot be the only thing you do. I want to make sure that's clear, okay? If that's the only thing to do or that you're good at is making those relationships and getting to know people, but you don't have any of that ability behind it, it's gonna be trouble. Okay, so those relationships you need to be strategic about how you build them. Are you demonstrating results? Are you maybe, I don't know, what I've always used is under promise and over deliver. And it helps, again, make sure that your brand, which you're building in building all these relationships, is backed up with something behind it. Whether that's a niche or something that you can stand out in, that's what you got to look for.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to hand this mic to Dallin, and he's going to go out. So if you have any questions for our panelists, raise your hand, and we'll get them answered.
So you guys mentioned at the start kind of how we can prepare to deal with like the kind of workplace nowadays. I would just like some more like specific examples of things that we can do now to prepare to handle that kind of versatile workplace that you mentioned earlier.
So one of the things that comes to mind with kind of academia, and maybe this isn't totally fair for all of academia, but oftentimes it's A to B to C, like formulaic. So you go to a math class, you got to learn the formula. You go to a class, it's kind of a checklist. You get your syllabus, you know everything you need to do. I would encourage students, if you think about being in that dynamic VUCA world, it's like, what are the experiences that you can pursue where the problem isn't defined, the solution may not be super clear, ambiguous, and you got to kind of work through it, whether it's you're working through people, you're working with scarce resources, whatever it might be. So it could be volunteer experience, could be a consulting project, case competition. All of these things are ways where you can get away from the kind of formulaic and critically think about, all right, the problem is not clear. What is the root cause of what I'm hearing based off the context and background? From what I know, what would I propose we do about it? And how are we going to get there? What's the plan, et cetera? Those kind of experiences are the ones that I think are going to set you up for success as you go on to an internship or full-time experience in a dynamic world.
I would also add to that, look for tough experiences. Take on those tough projects, volunteer for those. Build out your brand and your reputation as somebody that has tenacity and moxie and intentionality and goes after those hard and difficult projects. Even things like relationship building, if you will. Look for people that you might not necessarily feel comfortable reaching out to, and reach out to those folks. We have plenty of resources available through social media and LinkedIn and so on, and maybe you get 20 rejections, but that one person that you connect with could be a game changer for you. So I think there's a lot there that you can do to set yourself up for success and set yourself up to differentiate, but it takes tenacity, it takes hard work, and it takes putting yourself out there and taking on the hard stuff.
My undergrad was in accounting. Any accounting students here? Come talk to me after. I would love to talk to you after this. Let's talk. But I studied accounting, and we never did like class presentations or like group work. So and then in my undergrad I had a 13-inch ponytail. So imagine me wearing a leather jacket with a 13-inch ponytail. That was Hayden in undergrad. But I didn't really talk to people in class because it was all just doing accounting homework myself. So I get into the MHR program. Honestly, I looked like a used car salesman. I'm not really sure why they let me into the program. I had a pocket square and everything. But I remember in Chris's class, I'm not sure if you're going to remember this, one of our first assignments, like the first week, we just did like a reading, and every student took like 2 pages, and then we had to present it back. And I was so nervous because I was like, these are all my peers, like I'm not good at presenting. And so I memorized the whole presentation, and then I missed a word. And then in my head I was like, oh, where am I? And then I was like, sorry. And it didn't go well. And then in Conrad's class, we watched this TED Talk. And I can't remember who it was, but the takeaway was like, fake it until you become it. And that just like hit home for me. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be an HR leader, if I'm going to go work for one of the biggest companies in the world, I have to be able to present. And right now we can't. So I said, you know what? Every single group project, I'm going to sign up to present. And sometimes we might struggle through it. Sometimes it might not be great, but I'm going to keep doing it until I get more comfortable. So my advice would be anything that you naturally feel uncomfortable doing right now in class, those are the things you need to do. I really love this idea of when you're on the treadmill, if you're walking at 3 and you go to 10, that speed still needs to gradually get to 10. It doesn't immediately start at 10. The same thing with each of you. As you are all trying to progress and get better at things, give yourself some grace, as we're not all perfect at everything. So give yourself some grace that when you're going from 3 to 10, it's going to take some ramp-up time.
Yes. I think for that it's a little bit of both, for sure. Go across that line, stick to it. when you recognize what your skills are, you can't just abandon them, right? They're gonna help build your brand to that. So stick to it. I go back to that dare mighty things. Go and just build it without permission and say, hey, this is something I've done. Happy to do more with it, wanted your feedback. Don't say something to the effect, don't thrust it down their throats or anything like that, but it's building your brand there. At the same time, when you do something, the more you involve others, the more credibility you're going to give to what you're doing. Especially as you're doing an internship. You're going to have lots of other people that are going to weigh in on, hey, how's this individual performing and whatnot. The more people you have in your corner to say, yep, man, that's a great guy. He's going to do it, the better off it's going to be in the end. That, again, goes to that relationship building and stuff we've been talking about. But you got to mix it, and you got to get people on your team.
Maybe just one thing to add. I think, and this maybe can build off of what Marcus was talking about. I think you got to start with what you do know. So when you're faced with a problem, like what I've seen is that people, may run to a solution, or they run to someone else to kind of say, hey, so they're more of a problem reporter than they are a problem solver. So just a couple of suggestions that maybe will help. First, you can understand the problem statement. I think that's the first place you start. Do I understand the problem? Do I know what the issue is? So just ask yourself the question. Do I have a good understanding? Because even if you go to someone else, it's your responsibility to provide the definition so that they can help you, right? So do you understand what the problem is? Do you have an idea of how it might be solved, right? You don't have to have the answer, but do you have an idea of how it might be solved? And my suggestion is write it out, right? Make it so it's clear in your mind. At that point, then you understand more clearly what you know and what you don't know. Then you go and you ask for help. You should never be afraid to go and ask for help, especially in like emergency situations, right? You don't analyze it when someone's bleeding to death, right? You kind of know what the problem is, you see what you need to do, and you move. But I think it also kind of ties out what Matt was talking about before. That builds credibility. That's a way you build a network, right? When someone knows that, hey, you're not going to show up with just reporting a problem that I could have figured out myself, but you've thought through, you've got a good definition of the problem statement, some ideas of how it might be solved, and you're coming for help. I think that presents a lot differently.
One more question?
There's been a lot of talk about necessarily building your brand and maybe finding a niche. In the evolved world of modern business, is there, I guess specifically in HR, is there a niche or a brand that you're seeing is really powerful and helping people to differentiate themselves? Is there something that you've seen that individuals have done to really set themselves apart and show that they can provide value?
I can start. In my third role with Honeywell, I got a lot of exposure to our CFO for Honeywell, who was just absolutely instrumental in my career and really brought me under his wing. And across Honeywell was regarded as one of the best leaders in the company and really helped kind of drive where we were going. And he had a long tenure at GE and Honeywell and had a lot of different HR partners. And the way he said it, which has kind of been part of my brand of who I try to be as an HR business partner, is he wants a business leader that happens to be in an HR role, not an HR person doing an HR role. And that's a big difference. So all of you, we've got, I imagine, different functions here, a lot of HR, at least one accountant, and some other folks. But when you go into a business role, I think your predecessors of who did roles before you can almost kind of set the expectation of what they're expecting you to do. And especially at some of these big companies, you just kind of take the playbook and just stay within the lines. And that's not my style at all. So I think being confident enough and willing enough to challenge the status quo, but approach things of how can I make an impact here? Obviously, I'm here to do a functional role. I'm here to be an HR business partner, but how else can I impact the business? And in a lot of cases, when I've supported business leaders, I'm the first call. So when they don't know what they're doing, whether it's an HR item or not, they're calling me. And I have to be a thought partner to my business leaders on how we're going to run this business. I think that's how you can do that. That's how you build your brand is don't just say, no, that's not an HR thing, like go to someone else. Really, don't minimize the impact you can have. Recognize the role you need to play, but be a business leader that just happens to be in an HR role, not just an HR person doing HR stuff.
Yeah, echo exactly what Hayden said. If you look at my team right now, there's one individual I thought of when Hayden was speaking. That person knows the business, 100%, and she's only been on my team for 3 years, with the company for 3 years, but she knows it in and out. Like she could absolutely run, maybe not a director role, but she could run the business if you put her in that, and that's awesome. The other thing I'd say is you being a part of Utah State already have a niche or a competitive advantage of that. And what I would say to that is that you're adults. Sorry. That's my boss says. The Utah State people that come are mature. They have been through life. They've gone through a lot of different things. That's unique, believe it or not. I don't want to overplay my hand on that, but that's the reality. The experience that you have, the learnings that you've had through here, just the school, the practicality of what you learn versus the technical accounting. Sorry. Used to it. I don't know. Is super applicable to your careers, and that's something that sets you apart.
Let's have one more question. Can we get a question from up in the stairs?
Is there an accounting question?
It's time to go.
So where I would start is, again, I think you do have to kind of read the situation, and you kind of have to understand who it is that you're dealing with, who the stakeholders are. But I think just having a good understanding and pausing for a second, you will never go wrong, right? You can't be like paralysis by analysis where you're overanalyzing the situation. But I think you've got to have a good enough understanding of the situation to know when to push and when not to push. And I think understanding that is an important first step.
I think, really starting out from a position of knowing your business, knowing how you make money, knowing how your P&L works, how your balance sheet works, and then knowing the stakeholders involved will give you credibility to be able to approach the situation with that tenacity to be able to say, I intend to do this. What do you think about that? Or to set up the conditions in which somebody can give you feedback, and again, one of your stakeholders can give you feedback and say, well, have you thought about this thing? And you can say, yeah, I have thought about that. I've analyzed these extra details, and I think that plays into my approach to go this direction. So being prepared, I think, is a key component of that, right? So, and leveraging the mentors and the coaches and the career champions that you build along the way helps a ton, because they end up kind of being your sounding boards at times to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about this situation. You got any thoughts around that? Maybe I need to navigate a little differently. And I think if you're again intentional about that, I think you can really set yourself apart. I think the other thing too is don't be afraid to fail. That's okay. That's how you learn, right? And that's how you learn to course correct and how you grow, and you learn not to do it the same way the next time. So those opportunities when you have a hiccup along the way are really where you can have step changes in how you approach those types of situations.
All right, let's close out here. We'll start with Marcus, and we'll just go down the row. First of all, I'll say Hayden here has a great podcast with one of our other graduates. It's called Fraud to Fearless, so you should all listen to it. But at the end of their podcast episodes, they always go over what their final takeaway or their final piece of advice is. So that's what I'd like to do here. What's your last takeaway? What do you take away from this meeting, or what last piece of advice do you have for our students?
Well, I don't have a podcast. Maybe two thoughts would be, just as you think about the VUCA world, push yourself to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And the second thing would be, in the spirit of March Madness, I saw a clip the other day from Kara Lawson, who's the women's coach for Duke basketball. And she talked about how we often have this thought of everything in the future is going to get easier. I just have to get to my internship, and then it's going to be easier. I just have to graduate from school, and then it's going to be easier. For me, we have 3 kids, and there was a point in time it was like, once they can walk and talk, it's going to be easier. It's not. And so what she pushed her team on was do hard better. It's always going to be hard in some form or fashion. And so don't look for how is it going to be easier in the future. Live in the moment and think, how am I going to do hard better?
In our board meeting earlier, we were talking about the importance of and. So in thinking about different things, I'm going to do this and we're going to do this. And I would tell you, make your own luck and help each other be successful.
I think going on with what Marcus said, I had a very similar approach to my career. I figured that, okay, on my internship, I'll get nervous before I present, but then once I graduate the LDP, I won't. Or I'm uncomfortable doing this, but once I hit director, I'm never going to get nervous, or I'm never going to be uncomfortable doing anything. And that is completely not true, which is why I started a podcast about imposter syndrome. But what I would say is all of you are uniquely different. No one else has gone through the same experiences as you. And so I really want to come back to that 3 mile per hour, 10 mile per hour on the treadmill. Recognize, and Ben referenced this, the power of growth mindset is magical. And I struggle with that a lot. I'm my worst critic 100%. And if there's something that I'm not great at, I beat myself up critically hard. And I think throughout my career, I've had to constantly self-reflect on what am I good at? What am I not good at? Things I'm not good at, how can I get better? How can I just thrive in this uncomfort until I get to where I want to get to? But the thing is, all of our careers, it's a journey, it's not a destination. There's never going to be a point when it's like, oh, I know how to do every single thing, and I'm never going to feel uncomfortable again. That's just not true. So I would, if you're like me and you're really hard on yourself, give yourself some grace. Recognize that from 3 to 10, the treadmill even has to do a ramp-up time. And really reflect on this growth mindset versus fixed mindset. If you're ever telling yourself something, I'm just not good at this, let's pull that thread a little bit further. Why? How can you get better? And the last thing I would say is just, you can do amazing things. So don't limit yourself. Don't put yourself in a box. I mean, I think all of us on this board, some of the biggest companies in the world, incredible careers, and we're here, and like dare mighty things.
Do you have an accounting podcast I can listen to? No. Okay.
We don't talk about accounting.
Similar to Matt's advice when he said help others. If you look at the best leaders in your life, in company, and whatever, who do they give credit to? Those around them, right? Especially managers. The best managers that I've had have definitely helped me, give credit to me when I did a good job, that recognition and whatnot. You are in a test state right now as students. And, you have that opportunity to lead. You just might not have the title to lead. When you're in those groups, when you're in those opportunities, be that person. Be the one who is lifting up others. Be the person who's recognizing others. That's a leader. And that is really what will set you apart, again, is making sure that you do that. So I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, there's a lot, I think, that we've talked about today. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be said, and I agree with everything that's been said up to this point. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is, I'm kind of, for some reason, I'm like thinking about my mother's voice, and it's like, watch your mouth. Now, and what I mean by that is there are voices that will come from all around you that will tell you why this can't be done, or why even maybe in some cases that shouldn't be done. And most of those, the most impactful, are the ones that are right here for you. And I think to what Hayden was saying earlier, I think you have to show up each day understanding that that's the world that you live in, but that you can be in that world, but you don't have to be a part of that, right? And this is not like self-affirmation, like, does anyone remember Stuart Smalley? Like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. It's not necessarily that, but it's just a true understanding of who you are, but most importantly about what you want to become. Again, I think that purpose is what has to drive you in this type of a very volatile world, either on a personal level, on a regional level, or on a global level. But that common thread is that you have purpose, that you understand who you are and what you have the capability to become, and that you're showing up every single day to achieve that in whatever capacity you can. And if that's one day, it may just be showing up for class, right? Another day it will be, hey, this teacher has said this 9,000 different times. I'm tired of hearing it, but you change your mindset and you say, but there's got to be something else here. I'm going to push a little bit farther, right? So I think those would be the key takeaways for me.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.